Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Crow and today we are going to be doing an ultimate guide to playing our supporters. Now, a full disclaimer, I am not going to be going over every single supporter in the game and how to fully play each of them in depth. This video is purely going to be me going over the recommended play styles for the different kinds of supporters, as well as going over where you should be positioning yourself during team fights, as well as what your primary objectives are inside of a match. So, without further ado, let's get straight into it. Supporters are arguably one of the best roles inside of the game, and this is due to their extremely useful abilities and crazy utility. Simply the fact that there's a certain group of these supporters that can do what majority of the Pokemon in the game can't is what makes them extremely good. However, despite the amazing potential our supporters have, inside of solo queue, what you can do means absolutely fuck all when you're queued up with a team that simply doesn't understand the very simple phrase that we all should have learned in fucking elementary school: teamwork. But I digress. Supporters are the role that gets the award for being an absolute essential inside of the game, as having a supporter versus not having a supporter is a drastic difference. Now, this should go without saying, but your job as the team's supporter is to support your team however you can, ensuring your lane partner gets last hits and stays alive. However, if your lane partner is a little overzealous, we'll say, do not follow them to their death. Regardless of your role, one of your top priorities remains to stay alive. Now, with that general intro out of the way, I gotta talk about one more thing before we dive into the different kinds of supporters and playstyles that entail with them. We need to talk about the one held item that should always be run on every single supporter: the EXP Share. Now, I am thoroughly convinced that only 4 of you actually know how the EXP Share works, so I am going to explain how it works. There are 2 kinds of people, one who does not have the EXP Share, and one who has the EXP Share. If you're the plucky person and don't have the EXP Share, and there is no one nearby with the EXP Share in hand, if you get the last hit on a wild Pokemon, you then get 100% of that wild Pokemon's experience. Simple and easy. However, when someone holding the EXP Share is nearby, there are a few different interactions that can happen. Here we have 2 people, one with EXP Share and one without. And here is a wild Pokemon. If the one with the EXP Share gets the last hit, they will always gain a set amount of 30% of the experience from the wild Pokemon, and because of the XP Share, the other Pokemon nearby, this Delphox here, will actually gain 100% of that Pokemon's experience. Then, in the instance where the Pokemon who is not holding the XP Share gets the last hit on the wild Pokemon, the same fucking interaction happens. The XP Share holder gains 30% of the XP that you gain from the wild Pokemon, and the one who isn't holding it gets 100% of the experience. Now, regardless of who gets the last hit in this instance, the XP Share holder will always gain a separate 30% of the experience, which doesn't take away from the actual total of the experience gained by the wild Pokemon, which that is what makes the XP Share so great. Now, if there are more people around not holding XP Shares, that 100% of the experience from this Indeedee here is actually then evenly distributed among all of those nearby. But now it changes based on who got the last hit. If there are 3 Pokemon nearby and the one with the XP Share gets the last hit, the other 2 Pokemon gain 50% of the experience from this Indeedee. Now, if one of the non-XP Share holders gets the last hit, the one who gets the last hit actually gets 70% of the experience from this Indeedee, and then both the XP Share holder and the other one nearby, who doesn't have an XP Share, they both gain 30% of that experience. Now, here are the certainties. When the XP Share holder gets the last hit, they will always gain an entirely separate 30% of the experience if there is at least one other Pokemon not running XP Share around. If they're alone, they will get 100% of the experience. So if these two are way over here, XP share here, they get them, they will indeed get 100% of the experience. But as long as there's a team member nearby, the XP shareholder will always gain 30% of that, and then the rest is distributed evenly among everyone else as long as they get the last hit. So if a non-XP shareholder gets the last hit when there's multiple allies around, they will always gain 70% of the experience, then 30% of the remaining experience is divided equally among the other Pokemon nearby that aren't holding an XP share. The one with XP share always gains 30% from its own separate mechanic because they're really cool like that. Now, I understand this is a little bit to take in. It's probably one of the most complex held items in the game. So here is a fancy flowchart that covers the basics of how the XP share works and very simply shows the situations in which the unique interactions with XP share occurs. Now, I myself did not do this math, nor did I create this flowchart. All of that credit goes to the lovely people over on the Math Cord and Unite DB. This information and math are only this easily accessible because of all of their hard work and dedication in figuring out the mathematics of Pokémon Unite, and if you want to learn more about the math of the game, head over to unitedb.com and start learning. Now, with the explanation of how the XP share works thoroughly explained, we can now move on to the reason you are actually here. Going back to our main topic, inside of the supporter role, I would say there are 3 different kinds of archetypes. First up, we have the healers, consisting of Pokemon like Comfey, Clefable, and Blissey. Then, we got the Warlocks, consisting of Hooper, Alcremie, and Eldegoss. And finally, we have our Disruptors, consisting of Psyduck, Sableye, Wigglytuff, and Mr. Mime. Each of these archetypes bring about a different way to play the game and support your team. The only one on this list that plays unlike any of them is Sableye, but we are going to be touching on that later. To start, let's talk about our healers. The healers in Unite are by far one of the most useful Pokemon to have inside of the game right now, especially considering the current meta being dominated by both speedsters, defenders, and generally sustain. A lot of sustain is kind of what the meta is right now. So having just one of these 3 Pokemon on your team can make a huge difference in the results of a match. As your team's healer, your job is to stay alive, keep your team alive, and ensure that your lane partner is well fed, happy, and of course, alive. However, you yourself also need to ensure you try and get your level 4 before the middle birds spawn at 850. Now, your positioning varies based on which healer you are playing. If you're playing Comfey, you pretty much just want to latch onto whichever Pokemon you view as the highest value on your team and try to keep them alive during team fights. Because if you aren't latched onto a Pokemon, Comfey is about as useful as a sheet of tissue paper. However, if you're playing one of the other options, such as Clefable or Blissey, you want to try and position yourself in the middle of your team and ensure that you can reach anyone within a few moments' notice with your healing abilities. Now, Clefable and Blissey are a little different, but their roles and positioning are roughly the same. Overall, when playing a healer, think of yourself as the heart of the team, trying to stay in the center of your team's positioning and constantly keeping your team nice and healthy, both during team fights as well as those important in-between moments. Now, let's talk about my favorite kinds of supporters, our Warlock fellas. Here we have Alcremie, Eldegoss, and Hooper. These guys have a good amount of variety in what they can do. You can either fully focus on a moveset centered around dealing damage, stuns, and providing buffs to your team, or you can focus on a moveset which provides support through healing, movement speed, transportation, and shields. Now, the reason I love these guys so much is because they have really good flexibility in what they can bring to a team. But getting back on track, when playing with any of these guys, you want to position yourself either in the back line or the center of your team, depending on what your team composition looks like. The reasoning for this is because a lot of your skills are quite ranged, so you can stay a relatively good distance away from much danger whilst continually providing support for your team. Now, Hooper is quite different and is much better suited for a duo, trio, or 5-stack when it comes to his healing build, as people tend to ignore your portals and not know how Trick Phantom Force works. So for solo queue with Hooper, I suggest sticking to Shadow Ball and Trick. A quick note for Hooper as well, their Unite move is extremely useful at bringing the whole team to one place. So when objectives spawn and you have your Unite move online, try not to be stingy about it and just let it rip, but do try and be smart about when you rip it. Overall, for our Warlocks, try and position yourself either in the center of your team or in the backline. Hooper works best being central, and Eldegoss and Alcremie can work in either position, but mostly sticks to the backline. Try and reserve your Unite moves for team fights, and do your best to keep your basic attacks going, and your team either buffed up or nice and healthy. Finally, we are going to talk about our Disruptors, which, funnily enough, makes up majority of our supporters in the game. In this category, we have Wigglytuff, Mr. Mime, Sableye, and Psyduck. These Pokemon fully focus on annoying the opposing team with stuns, hindrances, and a surprising amount of damage for what you'd think a supporter can do. The positioning of these Pokemon is quite unique, as each of them actually fulfill different roles, but for the most part, a lot of our Disruptors are positioned near our front line. This is because they are actually a lot tankier than some of our other supporters, and need to get a little bit closer and more personal with the opposing team for their disruptor nature to shine, as pretty much all of them except for Psyduck is melee ranged. Now, the exception here is Sableye, who is truly an entirely different breed of Disruptor. We'll talk about the differences after we talk about the general roles of our Disruptors. For the most part, each of these Pokemon have extremely strong lane presence, both early and late, and they all have relatively good secure and survivability. Your goal as the team's Disruptor is to set up moments where the rest of your team can engage in team fights, lane fights with an advantage. You accomplish this by being annoying, present, and oppressive when you have opportunities to do so. Now, as confusing as it sounds, this is where Sableye is both vastly different, yet very similar to them. Sableye has a mechanic where he turns invisible, hiding himself from the opposing team's vision, yet when you get within a certain range of them, you'll have a short amount of time until your presence is eventually revealed. Now, with this mechanic, Sableye is arguably one of the best Pokemon in the game at getting information on the opposing team. Using his tools such as Feint Attack and Confuse Ray, mixed with his invisibility mechanic, you can very easily sneak around teamfights and cause extremely annoying hindrances which can be extremely beneficial for your team. Now, an obvious thing that Sableye is good at is scoring. Bam, done, scored, 50, easy, in and out. There's simply no denying that. But when playing Sableye, please do try and be aware of your team's positioning and look for appropriate times to score, because nobody appreciates it when you peel off mid-ray fight to score, when you could, in fact, be hindering the opposing team and giving your team an advantage at the ray fight instead. Overall, Disruptors position themselves near the team's front line, or they attempt to get good vision on the opposing team by sneaking around. Your main goal as a Disruptor is, of course, to disrupt and displace the opposing team to give your team an advantage during team fights and lane fights. And there you have it, a very quick rundown of how to play the different kind of supporters in the game. Now, before we end the video, I will give a quick list of held items which work extremely well on all the supporters. Keep in mind, one of your 3 held items should pretty much always be XP Share. For our healers, you can run any of the following items: XP Share, Buddy Barrier, Focus Band, Wise Glasses, Special Attack Specs, and Rescue Hood. You can run any combination of these held items on our healers, and I would be a happy chappy, with the XP Share being a permanent first slot, of course. For our Warlocks, you can run XP Share, Focus Band, Slick Spoon, Muscle Band, Resonant Guard, and Rapid Fire Scarf. You can run a combination of any of these held items, with of course XP Share being the one you always choose first. Then, for our Disruptors, I suggest any of the following held items: XP Share, Focus Band, Resonant Guard, Slick Spoon, and Buddy Barrier. As I've said the past 2 times, any combination of these held items work brilliantly, but also, as I've said the past 2 times, I personally suggest to always run XP Share. And finally, for Sableye, because his gimmick is vastly different to every other Pokemon, I suggest running XP Share, Floatstone, Leftovers, or Amulet Coin. With these held items, you can interchange Leftovers with Amulet Coin, but for the most part, I would say to always run XP Share and Floatstone on Sableye, as it simply synergizes way too well not to. Okay, that's really the end of the video now. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. And if you did, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel, as it really does help me out, and I'd love to hear all of your thoughts. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all next time, and as always, please remember to stay hydrated.